Hey guys, I'm Jackie Brubaker, your host of That Girl, the podcast. I'm an author, performer, 2-time Emmy Award winner, human relationship specialist, and founder of the wellness website loveyouevenmore.com. Each week, I bring on inspiring people and experts in their field to have powerful, motivational, and enlightened conversations about relationships, self-development, and how you can live your most authentic life. Follow us for daily updates on myself and the podcast at That Girl the Podcast and at Jackie Brubaker on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and our Patreon page. While you're at it, make sure to check out my new wellness website, loveyouevenmore.com. If you're wanting to dig into developing more self-worth, be healthier about relationships, and learn how to date smarter, go to loveyouevenmore.com and follow us on Instagram at loveyouevenmore. Welcome, Michelle Ferris, to That Girl, the podcast. I am so excited to have you on. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, woohoo! And today we are going to talk about what codependency is and how to recover from it, how to see it in your life and stop creating these codependent relationships. So I always like to let my guests introduce themselves and give a little background because you guys do a much better job than I can. So Michelle, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Like you said, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I have been in my own codependency recovery for a really long time. And honestly, that's part of the reason why I love it, is because I understand what it's like to be codependent and how difficult and overwhelming it can feel when you're starting recovery, because it's like a tree with many branches. It just goes everywhere. So I started my recovery in my 20s. So by the time I did therapy school, I was definitely in the process of learning about myself. And I highly recommend that for anyone who is doing this work, or those who are looking for a therapist. Ask if they do their own work, because that to me is super, super key.
Right. It's just hard to relate to someone if they kind of only know it from a book,
Right.
and then they don't really,
because it's
know
very
that.
different.
Right. Exactly. So let's just jump in. You deal with people who have codependency issues and how hard it is to even just recognize that. So maybe we'll start at the beginning and just recognizing what is codependency, because it's a word we hear a lot,
Right.
and it's talked about, but still some people are like, I don't know what that really means. Like, does that mean I'm needy? I don't know. So
Yeah.
what would you describe it as?
So I describe it as a pattern of behavior where you're focusing on others at your own expense. So these are the people that get lost in relationship. They tend to overhelp, over volunteer, because they find their value in what they do and or their relationships. So they're very externally focused on, my worth has to be determined by you, who I'm in relationship with, or what I'm doing for you.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because there's a lot of kudos out there. These are the people that get raises. These are the people that are very cherished in their communities because they do a lot of good. So the line I always like to talk about is, you can absolutely preserve that quality of giving, but the line crosses into codependency when it starts to hurt you. And what
does that look like if it's starting to hurt you for someone?
So if you're giving your time when you're neglecting yourself and your family, you're doing things for others that you really don't want to be doing. And so secretly you're starting to resent it. And now you don't really want to be talking to that person now because you have all this resentment and it builds up. And because you're a people pleaser, which is part of codependency, you're not going to necessarily want to say, hey, I'm doing too much. You will codependents disappear when there's conflict because we don't like to risk it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can have some scenarios right now.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, with codependency, some people relate to certain characteristics like being a people pleaser, being a chameleon, but there's also the other aspect of it is when we're trying to control people, places, and things. And that can be a little bit different personality type. So some people are going to say, well, no, I don't control anything. I'm a people pleaser. Well, that might be the side of codependency you're on.
Yeah.
Or the person that goes to church and says, you do this, 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 and this, they're really good at leadership, but they tend to overdo and they get resentful because they're doing too much. Mm-hmm. So there's different nuances that, it's really about finding what characteristics you relate to and working on that.
Yes. There's one other thing I really want to get your input on that I was reading this morning, that people can be actually kind of in the kind of controlling, like you were just describing, but like very grandiose and very like angry about just getting their way. How is that codependent? Where does that come from?
I'm thinking of someone in particular, which I won't mention, but yeah, I think it's because they get wrapped up in the results, because if the results aren't what they want, they think they've failed.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's so sad, because inside they're really just wanting it to work out and for them to be happy and everyone else to be happy, but it's not. And they use kind of this grandiose and this anger from the resentment. Oh gosh. So then there's also, let's talk about it in personal relationships. Maybe let's start with parents.
Yeah.
Always your parents,
Yeah. Oh, the helicopter mom
right.
Yeah. That can be a codependent for sure.
Right. Do you feel like maybe this like younger generation is just more helicoptery because maybe their parents weren't, or where do you think that actually kind of came from?
I think it depends on your childhood. So if you grew up like I grew up in the 70s where, kids should be seen and not heard. My mom was a single mom. She was, there wasn't any tools back then for self-esteem and child development and emotional needs. So I grew up wanting to do a lot for my kid because I wanted to make up the gaps of what I didn't get, even though, my mom did a pretty darn good job as a single mom. But that's where if we're neglected or not given a lot of validation growing up, we tend to see my kid's not going to have that experience, so I'm going to overdo it. And then we end up, it's the opposite side of the same dysfunctional problem.
Got it. So I mean, I totally get that. Like, I don't have kids, but I have cats, and I swear I am like I really do work on it because I could feel the helicopter in me. I can.
Yeah. It's hard to let go.
Yeah. I'm like, they're fine. Leave it. They're fine. But okay. So yeah, let's talk about how you can kind of stop that if you're that helicopter parent too.
Well, the biggest thing I think when codependency is impacting your parenting is you have to remember that your children are separate from you, and you can't get your validation or your self-esteem from what they're doing. And that was the one part that I was good at. I mean, there was a lot of ways my codependency affected my parenting, but that was one that I never saw my child as someone I needed to get validation from or my worth from, because I had already been in recovery a while. But that's super easy as the codependent, because we want our kids to be successful and get good grades and whatever expectations we have for them. The problem is that if that defines us, it's going to be really tough to handle it. Like, say, if you have a kid that's outside the box, that doesn't do well in school or doesn't do what you want them to do, then you're going to feel like a failure when that's not fair to you, because it's really, every kid pops out differently and has their own temperament, and we can't really control that.
Yeah. How can people let go of that outcome? Because that's a tough one, because I think a lot of parents think, well, this is reflecting on my parenting. This is reflecting on my character. How come they're so different than me? How come they won't listen? I'm giving them all of this information to do it well. And they're like, no.
Right. Well, you have to work on your self-worth and finding internal ways to feel good about yourself. And that's what recovery is about, is to get the focus off of who you're fixated on, whether that's helping, loving, doing too much for, and really starting to ask yourself, okay, how can I feel good about myself? And what does self-esteem look like if I don't base it on what I do for others or who I'm in relationship with? Because that's harder work. And that's where you need a tribe to be in recovery. You can't just do it by reading a book. It's too hard.
Yeah. And it's interesting too that you keep saying like being in recovery, because it is, I don't think codependency has been considered a disease like technically, but it
Right.
is very similar, kind of in the same
Hmm.
vein as like addiction. And so it
Hmm.
is something that you're constantly working on and are in recovery. Oh gosh, I was just gonna ask you something. Hold on. I'm thinking about how I'm just gonna throw this in here real quick. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about how what we just talked about with like some parents feeling like their kids are an extension of them. And if they
Hmm.
fail, like, then
Yeah.
you fail. And
Yeah.
there is a slight twinge of narcissism that kind of pops up when I hear that.
Mm.
Is that narcissism or is that codependency? And how can you tell if it is or it isn't?
That's a good question. It depends. Narcissism is very different. They need their child to perform so that they get recognized.
Right.
But the codependent needs it because they want to make sure the child is doing well, and it helps them feel less anxious. So they don't necessarily need, the codependent doesn't say, "Hey, look at me. I'm better than because look, my kid gets straight A's." The narcissist is going to say, "Hey, look at me. I'm the best dad or mom ever." So they're going
Yes.
to want that kudos back to them. Whereas the codependent doesn't necessarily look for that as a benefit.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I mean, I can see how a lot of people will be like, but I'm just proud of my kid. Like, does
Right.
that make me codependent or does that make me a narcissist? Like, oh
No,
my gosh.
no. But if
Yeah.
your kid can fail at something and you don't get crushed, and you can realize that, this is their learning lesson, then you're probably okay. You're
Yeah.
probably not severely codependent.
Right. I know something, my mom and I have a very close relationship, but
Hmm.
one of the things she's so, I want to say like obsessed with is my safety. And so kind of hearing this makes me
Uh-huh.
think like, oh,
Uh-huh.
she just really wants me to be safe. And like you said, just taken care of and like doing well,
Right.
basically.
Well, and it's a different world now.
Mhm.
So, some parents are going to be more mindful and more careful and more afraid for their kids because when I was little, I remember one time I went on the bus to the town over at like 11 with my girlfriend, and I was scared at the time. You would never do that now at 11 years old, on
Mm.
a bus by yourself to another city. There's no
Yeah.
way. So, some of this is the world has just changed, but we have to go back to, are we finding our value in other people? Because that's always the line where codependency starts.
Right. So with that, let's talk about codependency in romantic
Oh,
relationships.
yes. Yes.
I'm just gonna let you take the stage. Go ahead and
Okay.
just let's talk about it.
So I knew you were going to ask this. So I was thinking about it. And so there's a couple of people or types of people that codependents attract. They tend to attract narcissistic people, okay? Because as the codependent, we have a very little sense of self, and the narcissist has an abundance or too much sense of self. So it ends up being a perfect match.
Mhm.
Or they attract people like alcoholics or addicts because they see their potential, but they would be great if they just stopped doing this one bad habit, whatever that bad habit is. They also attract people with a lot of problems or issues because, again, they see the potential. And they also attract, the last type is the emotionally unavailable person,
Mm.
because even codependents aren't necessarily emotionally available to themselves. They think they are because they want so much to connect,
Yeah.
but like attracts like. And so if we're not in touch with ourselves and grounded, then we're really not going to be emotionally available for somebody. So we end up attracting someone who is also not really emotionally available to themselves, let alone you.
That is just a web of chaos right there. Cause I mean,
Yeah.
I recognize that in myself, and that's something I'm working on. And I'm glad I'm doing pretty well. But
Yes.
yeah, no, it's very easy to if you haven't been doing that work to be like,
Right.
oh, but they have so much potential, or they're such a great
Right.
person that they have an addiction,
Right.
whatever it is. And because I think like the easiest word that always comes to mind is people pleasing. Like you're always trying to make other people happy or just people pleasing.
Right.
Um, and that's like a never ending journey. And like intuitively, I just feel like, well, if you haven't hit the end of that journey, it's still possible. The hope is still there. That person could be like the
Mhm.
potential you see in them. Like, don't give up. And that's just a never ending
Yeah.
process.
Well, but there is something to be said because people who are married, right, to addicts or alcoholics and they feel stuck, doing your own recovery and learning how to detach appropriately and let them experience their consequences, a lot of times that leads that person to get into their own recovery. So, I think that, nobody's going to find the perfect relationship.
Right.
But if you can take care of yourself in that relationship, then you can eventually come to see, okay, is this relationship going to be sustainable for me, or is it not, because they're just treating me really badly and I can't get away from it, or the values are too different, or whatever else is happening.
Right. Yeah. And we'll get into recovery because
Mhm.
I think self-worth is the basis of, it should be the basis of your recovery for anything, right? Or of
Yeah, I
just your
agree.
life. um, so let's give some scenarios too of romantic relationships that are codependent. So people have
Mhm.
an idea that maybe they're in one.
Yeah, so this might be the codependent person who is dating somebody who has a lot of issues and maybe can't hold a job,
Mm.
and they see that they're really kind and they love them, but maybe they start to support them, or maybe they ask them to move in with them because they feel sorry for them and they've had bad luck. The problem is that they think it's a temporary thing, but then 5 years later, the person's still not working and still not functioning independently for themselves. That's a
Yeah.
really sad but true example of what a codependent might look like.
Yeah.
Or the codependent could look like, attracting the narcissist, where there's a lot of gaslighting, meaning the other person, the narcissist, is saying, I didn't hurt you, I didn't say that, and totally denying their hurtful behavior and demeaning comments. So, but the problem is that, you know, the codependent person looks for the authority, and the narcissist meets that. They do look confident on the outside, even though they're struggling with self-esteem just the same.
Right. That's what's so interesting too about narcissism is that
Mm-hmm.
they are deeply insecure. It's
Right.
just they took a
Right.
different route
Mm-hmm.
from the other codependent. They took the route of the grandiose. And that I could also just be from the way they were raised. Maybe their parents were saying like, you're always going to be right. Like our family's always right. It's a cultural
Right.
thing, right? Like you're better
Mm-hmm.
than everyone
Mm-hmm.
else.
Yeah.
So you just kind of grow up feeling that way, even if you're deeply insecure. And then
Yeah.
thus the narcissism begins. But yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. Are there any other kind of situations, codependent relationship wise, that we should talk about?
Mm-hmm. I think a common one that doesn't get talked about enough is the codependent friendship.
Oh, yes, you're right. Let's talk about that.
Because, especially with women, we get
Oh,
really
yes.
close. And the problem is that sometimes we get so close that we don't really have good boundaries.
Mhm.
And one person notices it, but the codependent person doesn't notice it, because the codependent person wants all that connection. And then if the other friend feels smothered and they can't say anything because they're afraid of hurting the other person's feelings, then eventually the relationship is going to end up breaking up, because it's really not healthy, because two people are kind of globbing onto each other, or one person is globbing onto the other, and it just isn't sustainable.
What happens if you do put up boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
the other person kind of just like fades away? I mean, I think as like
Mm-hmm.
your own codependent
Right.
self, you'd be like,
Right.
but I didn't want to lose that person. How do you kind of navigate
I
that?
know. Well, that's the key, is when we start setting boundaries, that is usually the telltale sign of how healthy a relationship is. And if the other person says, oh my God, you're hurting me, this is horrible, I can't believe you would set a boundary, this is so hurtful, that's a pretty big reaction that really doesn't have much to do with the current relationship. It has much
Yeah.
more to do with their own history and their
Yeah.
own trauma. So, unfortunately, when we get into recovery, not all of our relationships are going to survive. Some of them are going to die away because as we get healthier, some of our friends and partners are going to not be able to tolerate that.
Yeah. I really did just go through something just like that with a very
Mm,
close friend. And it just took a turn. And
yeah.
I had to, put up a boundary and just say, like, this is how I'm feeling and this is what I've noticed. And like, I
Mm,
need you to be a better friend.
uh-huh.
And it was really painful because she, and I were on Zoom and it was very hard for me. I was like nervous, I was like actually
Oh,
shaking
yeah.
to say this because I was hoping that maybe we could like work past it. But
Hmm.
what I think is so hard for me is that, I love her and I want the best for her. And I
Right.
want to like listen and, be
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
but I didn't get that back. I just wasn't getting that back.
Mm,
And so I
uh-huh.
thought, okay, well, let me
Yeah.
put this boundary up. She knows how I feel. And if
Hmm.
she can reach out and be a better friend, then, we can maybe like kind of get back to square one, but that hasn't really happened. And
Hmm.
it's
Right.
sad, like you said,
It
like
is sad.
sometimes it just, you have to do what's right for you. And when you're in recovery, you will see people just drop off. And you're right,
Right.
it is absolutely what they're going through. Cause I could see the confusion and I was like, oh man, like she's like, no, I know what friendship is. I'm like, I know you do.
Mm,
You just haven't been
yeah.
doing it. Like I just
Right. Well, it's
not
become
seeing it.
one-sided. And when somebody can't see that often indicates some narcissistic tendencies, because if they're not able to be there for you and there isn't a give and take, it's only a take, then that's a really telltale sign that they're not able to really tolerate, giving, which is an
Right.
important part of any relationship.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about recovery and kind of how that
Mm,
starts. I think a lot of it's
yeah,
just awareness, but
I
how
agree.
how
I
does that
think
start?
I think the first step in codependency recovery is to start looking at what behaviors in your relationship are the most problematic. What are the things that are happening that you really are finding painful? Because for me, for most people I know, the motivation is in the pain. Because if I'm hurting about something, I'm much more likely to go, this doesn't feel good. I need to look at that. So, because you could open Codependent No More, right? The Bible on codependency, and there are pages and pages of symptoms and signs. But it's on a continuum. You may be severely codependent, you may be somewhat codependent, or you may be a little bit codependent. It just
Mhm.
depends. So really, recovery starts with identifying what those issues that you relate with are, because it isn't a one size fits all. And then you have to start being willing to shift the focus from, instead of I'm going to connect with you or I'm going to take care of you and please you, what do I need today? What
Yeah.
am I needing? What's my self-care like? And initially, this is going to feel selfish. This
Yeah.
is going to feel really awkward, like, oh my God, I don't want to be that person. But the problem is that self-esteem and self-care is not arrogance. And
Mhm.
that's where they get confused. They think, oh my gosh, I'm being arrogant if I think of myself. You're only arrogant if you only think of yourself and you never think of others. But
Yeah.
if you don't think of yourself, then your relationships are going to reflect that. And then everybody else is going to put you last alongside of what you're doing. And that is not a great place to start a relationship.
Right. And then you'll always wonder, like, why am I always the third wheel or the last picked or, whatever the
Right.
situation is.
Right.
So what are some things that people can do to kind of
Mhm.
start? I mean, again,
Yeah.
I have a course coming out. It's all on self-worth. You should go check it out.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I'm really proud of it. And it gets really into codependency. It gets into a lot of things like this. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
it's real based in psychology. But what can people start to do? Like
Yeah.
what's one simple thing they can do to really begin this recovery?
Well, there's a lot, but one thing they can do, they're going to turn the focus on themselves and really start to get to know what it is they want and need. But honestly, I would also find a group, find some place to get support, because I always recommend Al-Anon or Coda, but there are other people, there are coaches that have codependency communities, because this is not something, it would be the same. I would say the same for addiction too, but
Mhm.
it's really hard to heal in isolation.
Yeah.
because the brain that wants me to heal is the same brain I have that's codependent. So my codependent self is going to not really know what to do. But if I can get with other people, and 12-step programs are free and they're on Zoom, and they give you sponsors, and you can take what you like and leave the rest. You don't have to buy into all of it.
Yeah.
But having a tribe that you feel like gets you is really going to make the recovery process, one, more interesting, and two, a lot easier to do, because you're not going to feel like you're trudging through mud.
Yeah. There's nothing better than when you hear someone's story and you're like, oh my God, that's mine too.
Yeah,
You totally feel that you're not alone in this. And that,
absolutely.
I mean, this doesn't have to do with codependency, but when I was in a narcissistic relationship and I
Mhm.
just thought this is only happening to me. Like I really didn't
Yeah.
think that
Yep.
anyone could be living this bizarro circus world that I was in. I'm like, no, no,
Mhm.
no, this is very unique. No, it wasn't. It was exactly to a T what a narcissistic
Mhm.
relationship looks
Mhm.
like. And like all of the unique parts of it just were typical, And
Right.
that's, I think, the most beautiful thing about finding out that you're not alone is hearing other
Right.
people's stories or reading other books and just being like, oh wow, thank God I'm not crazy.
Exactly. And that's why educating yourself about codependency or narcissism is really key in really figuring out where you land.
Yeah. What are some wonderful books that you love about codependency that people should look
Mm.
into?
So I like The Codependent No More.
Mm.
I love, my friend, actually, Sharon Martin, wrote a book. It's called the CBT for Workbook for Perfectionism.
Oh,
Oh, it's so good, because
oh,
part of codependency is trying to be perfect and never making mistakes.
right.
So even though it's about perfectionism, it definitely relates to codependency.
Oh, let's talk about that really fast because I certainly
Sure.
suffer from that. I mean, you look at my bio and you're like, oh, you suffer from perfectionism, don't you? Yes,
I
it's
was really impressed with your bio, honestly. I thought it was amazing.
Yep. I work my little butt off and I'm trying to like chill out more so that I
Yeah.
can just enjoy life
Yeah.
and have some fun. But that
Good
is
for you.
absolute, part of codependency is
Hmm.
not only are you people pleasing for others, you're doing it for yourself because
Yeah.
it's just a constant thing. So
Right.
describe what that looks like.
Well, when we try to be perfect, a couple things are happening. One, we're trying to find our worth, and we're doing it in a very extreme way. And, most kids don't learn from their parents that it's okay to make a mistake.
Mm,
We get told you're bad, you're wrong, you should be more like your sister, whatever that is. And, imagine if as kids we learned that, oops, you made a mistake. That's okay. That's part of life. And that parents actually model making mistakes. I mean, I used to tell my son, I wasn't a big yeller, but once in a while, I'd get upset and I'd have to go back to him and say, I'm sorry I said that, or I'm sorry I raised my voice. I know that was kind of scary. And he lit up like a Christmas tree because
oh,
he loved the accountability.
yeah.
And then later he would literally, if he would yell at me, he'd come back and go, sorry, mom.
Oh,
And I knew it because I modeled that. It's like he knows that it's okay, or he knew, still does. And that's really an important part, because if we can love ourselves, warts and all, because we
yeah.
all have that,
Mhm.
that's the goal. Not, oh my God, I have to be so perfect. Nobody's going to love me unless I'm perfect, unless I'm beautiful, unless I'm thin, unless I'm super smart or smarter than everybody else. It's
Right.
like you're running a race where you're going to end up collapsing at the end of it, versus, when I think of people that I love their little nuances. I don't love them because they're a perfect friend,
Yeah.
you
No.
know?
It's so true. And I guess if you do love them because they're, let's just say really successful or famous or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other topic. That's not good. Then you
Well,
don't really
right.
love them.
Right, because it's based on what they do, not who they are. And that's where some of our relationships we may need to assess and figure out, okay, can they be sustainable? And can I start to make slow changes, like saying, no, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I can't do that for you, but let me help you find a solution. So you
Right.
still feel like you're doing a service, but you're not volunteering yourself when you know you can't.
Right. And I think getting back into the, the workaholic perfectionism and,
Hmm.
like this goal, now this goal, no, 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 this one. And it's,
Right.
it's the carrot constantly dangling that you are dangling to yourself. Um,
Right.
you know, what I've noticed, and I think most everybody feels the same way, is like once you achieve that thing, it's like fun for like 2 seconds, it's really
Yeah.
quick. And
Yeah.
then you're so on to the next thing that even when you do achieve the thing you wanted, you're like, oh, but I'm just thinking way in the future. And you're always living in the future, never in
Right.
the present. And you're
Yeah.
still in people pleasing mode. It's just with yourself. And the truth
Oh,
is, it's like,
yeah.
it's great to achieve things, but
Hmm.
if you're not, if it was all taken away, and I think a lot of us felt this, I certainly did during the beginning of the pandemic, right? Like
Hmm.
all of that external stuff was taken away, your, job and your everything that makes you you. And now it's just
Hmm.
you and your leggings, like hanging out, doing nothing all day. Like it
Right.
really is, it's very
Right.
humbling. And I remember thinking, like, wow, I don't have anything except in my past of things I've accomplished in my past to fall back on. Like if someone asked you, like,
Hmm.
what are you up to? I'd be like, I'm unemployed right now. Like, and that's
Right.
really triggering for a
Hmm.
codependent when they
Right.
are perfectionist, with themselves, especially with work. And I'm so glad that
Hmm.
that did happen. And, for people listening, maybe you've been through something similar, but like,
Hmm.
I'm really glad that happened because it really shifted my brain into thinking like, but your worth is not based upon what you do. Like that's
Hmm.
a lovely exterior thing, but your worth is really based on just how well do you treat yourself and how well do you treat others? Like
Right.
what are you
But
doing?
you, but you were willing to catch that and say, oh my gosh, I'm chasing something to feel good. And then you realize that. And I think with social media, it gets even more compounded because people want to be liked and they want to be noticed and they
Yeah.
compare themselves to other people. And, I think what you did was really able to stop and go, ooh, this hurts. I need to do something different, which is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And social media is such a horrible place where you can be really, codependent in
Hmm.
that way.
Yeah.
And, I always say like you've got to remember that it's not equal in social media. There are algorithms, there are things happening
Right.
behind the scenes that whether
Right.
it's photoshopping or algorithms or just Facebook is, crazy pants, like it's not real. It's not
Right.
accurate. So, if you're getting like 5 likes on something, like cool, like it doesn't matter. Just do it.
Hmm.
Put out what you want to put out because you feel strongly about it. You want to share. So,
Yeah. And I think that's where having a support system is so helpful because if you're trying to feel good in your life without any support, it's really hard to do. I mean, look at the pandemic. 12-step meetings thrived during the pandemic.
yeah.
And most of them didn't miss a beat because they immediately had continued support. Whereas a lot of people started drinking more, started gaining weight because they
Yeah.
didn't have that support system and they
Right.
didn't know how to handle that much stress.
I remember my stepmom saying, gosh, we're just so proud of you. Like you could have become like an alcoholic during the pandemic. I was like, that would never have happened, but thanks. Like,
Well, a lot of people had addiction issues for sure. And I
yeah,
understand that. If I didn't have my program and I only had my husband and my son during the pandemic and had no support, I would probably wouldn't have fared well either.
no,
That's a big
yeah,
ask for people.
it is. Are there any more books that you definitely suggest on codependency or anything that people should, check out?
Facing Codependence by Melanie, or not Melanie, Pia
Yeah,
Melody.
Melody. I
Yeah, I
love
mean,
that.
it's an older book, but I really like it.
It's great.
The other one, this is an older one too, but it's really good. It's called The Dance of Anger, but I know that there's some codependency in it because they talk about the overfunctioner and the underfunctioner.
Mm,
And that's really part of the codependent dynamic is I'm going to do all the work
yeah.
and then I'm going to resent you because you're not doing your part. But I can't stop doing 100 million things because that's my motor, right? I need to get my value. So part of sometimes what happens in codependency recovery is we actually have to learn to do less and to let that person see if they're going or willing to step up and start doing more. Because sometimes we can think, well, they're not doing what I'm doing, but we're not actually giving them the chance to step up and do their part. So that's why I really love that book. That's by Harriet Lerner.
Okay. That's such a topic right there. In relationships, especially, is like usually the woman's just doing way too much. The man's like, cool. I mean, you're so good at it. Like, well, I won't stop you.
Right.
But yeah, when you do back up and just say like, yeah, I'm just going to not pick up his socks that he leaves everywhere. I'm just going to see what happens.
Right.
Yeah. Then the guy does usually like kind of eye open and I was like, what's going on? But what if this is just totally off topic, but like, what if like, this happens, you pull back and then your partner just like doesn't change? Like, what do you do?
Well, the hard part is if the codependent, let's just say that scenario, right? The wife is doing all kinds of stuff. The husband is used to it. The problem is that resentment builds and builds and builds. And then by the time the codependent person has had enough, they're going to explode. And so the husband is going to be like, what's going on? We've had this agreement for a long time. So part of what we have to do is we have to own that, you know what? I realize I have entered into this silent agreement with you that I'm going to do 80% of the work. And I realize I can't maintain that. And I would really like us to talk about changing that pattern. And I'm going to change it by starting to do less. So I'm coming at my partner with my own process, not you need to do your half. I've been doing 80% and that's not fair, because really that's the agreement. And we have to own that we have built a relationship off a dysfunctional agreement. And if we can present that to our partner in a neutral way, in an accountable way, we're actually going to get a lot further than, when we end up blowing up, which again is totally understanding and usually understandable. Usually that's what the codependent does, is they hit that wall and then boom, they can't stand it anymore and they blow.
Oh, that's me.
Oh, it's me too. It's most codependents, because we hold on. And then, oh my God, one more dish. And then we can't do it.
Yeah, no, it's awful. I would love to have you actually on so that we could just talk about like relationships and like the small fights that we have that are really bigger, topics. I would love to have you back. Tell people how they can find you, because you're just lovely.
Oh, so are you. I have so enjoyed this. I'm so impressed with, you're young and you're doing this work. And I was in my early 20s when I started, and it was the best thing I ever did. So I'm like totally cheering you on right now. Thanks. That a lot of young people are going to find you and go, I can relate to her because she's not 50.
Oh,
I think that's really important because, some people are going to relate to me. I'm 54 but a lot of these young people need role models. So I'm super, super glad that you're doing this.
Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. So anyway, to find me, my website is counselingrecovery.com. And I have a YouTube channel under Michelle Ferris, relationship therapist. So I do weekly videos there, and I have lots of free content and courses and books and all that kind of stuff if people want more.
Perfect. And it will be all in the show notes. So you can just click on the links. Are you on Instagram?
I am. I'm Counseling Recovery on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. All right, Michelle, this was so great. Thank you so much. There was so much good knowledge that was put out today. I really hope everyone listened to the very, very end, because it just kept getting better and better. I was like, oh, there's this nugget and then this nugget.
Oh, this was fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Remember, sharing is caring. Make sure to rate the podcast and leave a review. We really rely on this to help get the podcast out there. Also, make sure to watch the video version on YouTube at That Girl the Podcast.